What's going on, guys? I'm Tyler, and I got bloodshot in my eye, so if I look bored in this video, I apologize. It just won't fucking go away, no matter what. But on the plus side, 2018 is coming to a close, and that means it's time to give you my list of my top 10, 15 best movies of 2018. That's right, for whatever reason, I just couldn't narrow it down this year. I know 2018 hasn't been a great year for movies, but I did avoid all the shitty ones at all costs. So, for that reason, you're also not going to see a worst of the year list for me because I didn't go see Slender Man or Truth or Dare or any of those shit like that because I'm not a dumb teenager and I like saving my money. And even though there are already 15 movies on this list, I do have a few honorable mentions, like 8th Grade, Beautiful Boy, Can You Ever Forgive Me, The Favorite, Mandy, Wonderstruck, and Last Flag Flying. All of those are good films, completely worthy of your time. They just came so close, but they didn't make it. So, with that said, let's get started with number 15. The Incredibles 2 was a film that I enjoyed just as much, if not more so, than the original, because it has all the exact same qualities that make both films good. The animation is very vibrant, fluid, and colorful. The action sequences are a lot of fun to watch, and the characters are just a ton of fun to be around, even when they're doing very mundane things. I love seeing what this family is going through. I love the fact that the themes of what it is to be a hero in the world and a hero in just everyday life are very well examined with Mr. Incredible and Elastigirl. The kids are not as relevant as they were in the first film, but they were still fun to watch either way. I would have liked more of Sam Jackson as Frozone because they really don't do that much with him, but either way, Incredibles 2, another great Pixar film, completely worthy of your time to the two people who haven't seen it already. Widows is a slow burn, and it's not for everybody, but I did have a good time with it either way. I thought the cast brought their A game completely. There are so many characters in this film who each have a beginning, middle, and end in their arc, which you don't get very often. Steve McQueen as a director shows that he can do action set pieces and make them seem as practical as possible. And the film itself was just a nice equal blend of independent cinema and mainstream blockbuster, and they go together seamlessly. First Man proves that Damien Chazelle can do a whole lot more than just musicals. I thought he did a great directing job, especially during the flight sequences where you felt like you were in the spacecraft with those astronauts. And Ryan Gosling and Claire Foy give much more underplayed performances than they usually do, and then all the better for it, because it delves into the emotional trauma that both characters had to go through, and the movie wasn't afraid to show off the more negative aspects of Neil Armstrong as a person. You don't really get that in most biopics nowadays, and if you've seen Bohemian Rhapsody, you know that biopics tend to look more on the positive, but either way, this film just got it right for me. Not enough people saw it. I don't know why. The flag is in the fucking movie, so what if they don't plant it in? Rant aside, First Man was one of the best films that I saw at TIFF, and be sure to check it out. Infinity War isn't one of my favorite MCU movies of this year, let alone in general, but it is one of the biggest, most action-packed, and even one of the funniest ones that I've ever seen. The way the characters interact off each other, whether they've worked together or not, was just a ton of fun to watch. Thanos as a villain. About time we had a villain as complex as this in the MCU movies. And just the overall scope that the Russo brothers bring to the Avengers was a lot to take in. I wish that I saw this more often in theaters, but I mean, $2 billion, it didn't need my extra money. That's right, I enjoyed Deadpool 2 a lot more than Infinity War. In fact, I've seen Deadpool 2 about 3 times this year, and for whatever reason, it just got funnier the more I watched it. And this is gonna sound weird, but the first Deadpool, I don't know if it got funnier the more I watched it. Like, there were extra things that I noticed in the background for sure, but the overall story and the jokes that came with it for the first film, I thought they were good. They were funny. But they didn't have the same surprise level that it did the first time I saw it. With Deadpool 2, there were so many extra things that I had noticed, and the jokes themselves, I think, were just a lot funnier and more memorable for me. And on top of that, the direction, the action set pieces, and just the overall performances, they stepped it up for me. Ryan Reynolds I could watch forever as Deadpool. Cable and Domino were great new additions. Russell was a little annoying, but he did have more motivation than Francis. And that's another thing about the first one that holds up. Francis has no motive. And if you haven't already, be sure to check out the Super Duper edition. It tells the story in a more coherent way, and the extra dirty jokes that they add in, I'm surprised they couldn't add in to the theatrical one. It still fits. Black Panther was the best MCU movie that I saw this year. Careful with that wording. Because it just brought so many different new things to the table. The cultural representation was extremely well done. Wakanda was a beautiful sight to behold. The characters themselves felt instantly recognizable and memorable, even if you never heard of the comic. The side characters do overshadow the main hero a little bit, I will admit that, but at the same time, it's nice to have a Marvel hero who doesn't do anything based on pure luck. He thinks things out. He's calculated. He's very methodical. And the things that he goes through as a person are not really just to learn what to do as a hero, but what not to do as a world leader. That's something new for Marvel heroes for me, and I appreciate it all the more for it. And Michael B. Jordan as Killmonger. Again, another great complex villain to the MCU movies. Bad Times at the El Royale, for me, was like watching Alfred Hitchcock direct a Quentin Tarantino script. I know that sounds weird, but at the same time, I just couldn't get enough of these characters. The performances were all really good. Drew Goddard as a director, really good stuff. He's got to make more movies like this. And I appreciate the fact that it takes its time building up suspense and telling its story purely through visuals as opposed to dialogue. And again, there are a lot of characters to juggle back and forth, and I will admit, when Chris Hemsworth first enters into the film, it slows down a little bit, but at the same time, all the pacing and build-up does pay off in the end. This is going to sound weird, but A Star Is Born was a movie that I felt like I couldn't review because, given the circumstances, I went to see it with my family, and I was just going to sit back, relax, and enjoy myself. And then, as soon as the first 5 minutes kicked in, I stopped analyzing everything and just soaked in all the beautiful concert performances, Bradley Cooper, Lady Gaga, and Sam Elliott's performances, and even Dave Chappelle's in the few minutes that he's in, all top-notch. Cooper and Gaga more Oscar-worthy than everybody else, and the story of how Hollywood can be a sight to behold, but can also wear you down as a person. These are themes that we've seen before in other movies, but just like La La Land, it's brutally honest in the fact that Hollywood can make or break you figuratively and literally. And on top of that, the songs were just so good. I could listen to them over and over again. Sorry to Bother You is probably the most original film that I've seen all year, given its sense of humor, otherworldly atmosphere, and the unique political standpoint that it takes. It's also the weirdest movie that I've seen all year, and I give full credit to Boots Riley as a director for doing that. The performances, the script, the political satire, and the twists and turns that the story takes was so funny and so quirky and fresh and different, for me anyways, that I just couldn't look away even when the film does slow down at certain points. My best way of comparing it to anything is, if you want to see a Terry Gilliam version of Get Out, check out Sorry to Bother You. What can I say about Into the Spider-Verse that hasn't already been said? The animation makes you feel like you're watching a comic book come to life. The characters are all well realized and relatable. The action scenes are a ton of fun to watch. It's just... I'm at a loss for words right now. The acting, direction, animation department, the script, Sony Animation has redeemed themselves, especially after last year. Mary Poppins Returns is a sequel like many we never thought we'd desire, but this film will make you laugh and dance and sing until you're tired. Music and lyrics, directing and acting, the effort just goes to show. If you want old-fashioned Disney magic, you know where to go. I really gotta go out on weekends. Yeah, I know. Fight choreography? Check. Practical stunts? Check. High stakes? Check. Great cast and great script? Double check on that. Mission Impossible Fallout is everything that I wanted in an action movie. My new favorite in the franchise. Please keep it at that and don't make any more sequels. You can't go any further than this, man, and that is as high of a compliment about this film that I can give. Boy Erased was the best film that I saw at TIFF. Joel Edgerton as a writer, as a director, and as the main villain in the film. Fantastic job all the way through. He doesn't direct this film like a standard biopic. He directs it with little emphasis on things like visual motifs or characters who are not one-dimensional, who are not black and white. There are characters who believe in ex-gay practices but do have certain doubts about whether or not they work. It's little details like that that make all the main characters and side characters feel completely complex. There were so many times while making my Boy Erased review where I just paused and had to think about what I had just seen, even though I had seen it days before. It had that much of an impact on me, and anyone who has been bullied or persecuted in the slightest can relate to this film regardless. In my silent review, I stated that You Were Never Really Here is a near-perfect movie, and I stand by that. Sure, you can compare it to films like Drive, but I don't really think that's a bad thing because I'd like more movies like that. Films that are told purely through visuals over dialogue. Films that make you question what the characters are thinking. Characters who have very simple needs and desires, but you can express those feelings in such a simple way. And Joaquin Phoenix gives, in my opinion, his best performance ever. Same with Lynn Ramsey as a director. This might be her best film yet. Each shot seems like it had been painted on a canvas. There is a huge attention to detail in regards to the scale, the scope, and just the depth of perspective that goes into each frame. And you don't get that in movies like that anymore. And when I finished watching the film, I sat in my chair for a good 10 minutes just thinking about the themes and the motivations and what I would have done in a given situation. And that's the highest compliment I can give to any film. Alright guys, we're down to number 1. This is the film that I have watched the most all year, a film that has gotten better every time I watch it, a film that I've noticed minor details that add a lot to the story over multiple viewings. And that film is A Quiet Place. I could go on and on about A Quiet Place and how much I loved it. In fact, I already have. My review is about 15 minutes or so long. If you want a more in-depth analysis of that, be sure to check that video out. But see the movie first, because the performances, the direction, the script and its themes, the cinematography, the sound design most of all, for me, was all completely top-notch. John Krasinski, Emily Blunt, Millie Simmons, Noah Jupe all gave fantastic performances, some of the best in each of their careers. Krasinski as a director puts so much detail into his direction. I noticed colors on their clothes that add a lot to what each character was feeling about themselves. The themes of how parents have to learn to let their children be independent, and children learning that the things they can do on their own they couldn't do without their parents. Themes like that are themes you wouldn't get in most regular movies, let alone horror movies. The build-up and the tension got better the more times I watched it. Some scenes reduced me to the fact that I had to close my eyes and even just go, oh, fuck. And it's a PG-13 horror movie where barely anybody dies. How often can you really say that about any movie, really? There's not much else that I can say that I haven't already said, and most people haven't already said, but A Quiet Place is my favorite movie of the year. Well, guys, thank you for watching. What are some of your favorite films this year? Be sure to let me know in the comments below. Be sure to like, subscribe, check out my other reviews at noperfectmovie.com. And once again, thank you all very much for watching. Take care.